All right, so today we have Ryan Simpson with us. Ryan Simpson is a marriage and family therapist who's also former law enforcement. And I don't know if how much you want to talk about it today, but can we get into just some of the PTSD experience?
Absolutely. I'm an open book to that, and I think you kind of have to be, because I think stigma tells you that you need to shut it down and not talk about it. And in law enforcement, the first big trauma was a shooting that I was in. Ended up losing a button off of my shirt. Really close call. Had a gun jam in the process, so I couldn't even really return fire, and found myself in that. We've all had those dreams where we can't run, we can't swim, we can't fight hard enough, and that was real life. So that was the first exposure that I had. And then over a 2-year process, I just um, started realizing that things started showing up, mentally, physically, somatic symptoms, hands trembling, things like that. Um, Ended up having panic attacks, and then I realized, I got into a really dark place. I think, like a lot of people do, they try to cope with it and use probably maladaptive coping strategies, and pretty soon I find myself in a downhill spiral. Ended up to continue my journey. It was take some time off, start feeling better. I get back to work. I ended up having a huge tragedy in my family, where my mom passed away from a bee sting. And then 2 months after that, I was in another shooting, and that just so happened to have some moral stuff to me, where it was a mother that was having a mental health crisis that ended up pulling a gun on me, ultimately having to you know um, take her life, which was really hard for me, because after losing my mom, and then her kids were on scene. I mean, as we talk about this, it's really a dark situation, but this is truly what happened to me. And so ultimately, uh, the kids were very, and they weren't necessarily kids; they were adult, grown kids, but it was their parents. You know what I mean? There were
Yeah.
um, two of her children were there, and it was a really hard situation. I felt morally just destroyed by it, considering what I had just gone through. And that was kind of like, there were several traumas in between that, some stabbing, some really bad stuff. And then these two shootings were kind of the catalyst of me um, breaking down, essentially. Breaking down, but not broken, and trying to build myself back up.
Do you remember the feeling or I guess the circumstances about when you reached out for help the first time?
I do. I was absolutely terrified, and I probably battled uh, what to do for at least 4 months. I just remember, if I tell anybody, there's going to be a fitness for duty. They're going to take my gun, and then not only do I have these problems, but I also have major financial problems. I had two young kids at that time, that I was like, if I lose my job, I lose my career, I'm basically going to lose everything. Then my house, and then so this idea that I couldn't tell anybody, and just kind of harbor it. That went on for about 4 months, and then when I was talking about the somatic symptoms earlier, with my hands trembling, and intrusive thoughts, and all these terrible anxiety ridden symptoms, finally it kind of put me at a place where I was, even contemplating suicide and things like that. I just didn't really know a way out. And then, it's just kind of a coming to Jesus talk with myself, saying, hey, I've heard of counseling. um, you either do something for yourself, or this is going to end up really bad. And so I took that step to reach out to somebody.
Well, and after you did that, I mean, obviously, it's a fairly anonymous call, but I'm sure that some of your coworkers and fellow officers got wind of that. Were they supportive? Were there people who weren't supportive in that process?
It was there were both. There were people that were very supportive, or I think genuinely people have a good heart, and want to take care. But at that time, I was on the SWAT team, And during that break that I took, the first break that I took, um, when I came back to the SWAT team, there were some mutterings and some things that I heard, that got back to me by other people that were supportive and listening to the non-supportive people. And basically, I addressed the whole team, and basically what the idea was is that I struggled with the first shooting, and how could I possibly have their back, because the chances are I would probably freeze in a situation, and maybe I should come off the entry team and things like that. And so, and I took that to heart. I actually brought that up in one of my counseling sessions. I was like, look, this is the concern. I'm actually concerned about it because I don't know. And the therapist, again, understanding the research on that, basically said, your first the way you respond in your first shooting is typically is the tall tale sign of how you're going to respond in all of them. And actually, you're tested and tried now, and we know that you return fire. And so, essentially, we probably know you're safer on the entry team than those that have never been tried, in that situation. And so that really, but again, it comes from the background. This particular therapist was super knowledgeable, and it helped, because I was telling myself I was broken, and these guys are probably right. You know, I don't know how I'm going to respond. So
Well, what would you say if you had a forum in front of that group of folks who were skeptical on your abilities, or didn't maybe know how to support you in your training now? What would you say to that group?
I would say that at that particular time, I believe the movie was called like American Sniper, and it was a big movie at the time. And it was, one of the main character, one of the he was trying to help after he got out of the military, was, had a foundation and was taking these PTSD survivors out shooting and trying to reacclimate them, not really knowing what to do. And ultimately, in the movie, one of the guys turned on one of his partners, and or the actual main character, and shot him. That's how this individual died. And so I think that kind of, reaffirmed the stigma. And so I think people were scared. I think people, but through the research, people that respond, physically, I mean, it's just such a low percentage that you can't even relate it to the PTSD, or is it some kind of, something else that's happening. And so it's really, honestly, Ethan, it's about stigma. It's about what are our old beliefs that we need to talk about, which is you're not really a safety concern is the best thing to do, to go out in where triggers are. And if you're in a shooting and go out and shoot guns, probably not the best environment to be in. But as far as being a danger, so and we can pretty much rid that out of there. So I would just say, it's really about education at this point, and really letting people know that, what gets people through is through connection. Really, um, I guess, recovery is through connection. We know that people that suck into their families and, um, their friendships and things like that do so much better than the other people that isolate. And so, as we know, the culture in police work, you could be in or out, and if you're out, it really sets you up for kind of failure in that. So it's really about embracing those people that are suffering.
You and I have presented your presentation together a couple different times to some large agencies. And I was surprised by how many people, admitted, even in a really safe spot, admitted that they were having issues when it came to mental health or PTSD or depression. Are you ever shocked by those numbers?
I, I'm not shocked by the numbers because I know what they are. I know that within any agency, if we go off the national average, 20% of that agency is suffering with diagnosable PTSD. We can go police, fire, EMS. So I know those numbers are there. Another 34% show signs and symptoms in at least one of the five categories. You know what I mean? So I know that people are suffering. Um, what's amazing to me, and where the magic is that people probably would have never said that had somebody not come in and kind of open the door of safety for them to say that. And that's where I get the most. And it's not like, oh, this person disclosed, so I did my job. It was like, no, this person felt safe enough to speak their truth. And to me, that's beauty, because that's change, and that's that person taking a step out of suffering. And I just, I don't want to see people suffer.
Well, and forgive me for asking this, but do you still have days you struggle?
Of course. Um, of course. And I think you could ask that to anybody. Does everybody have days that they struggle? Yes. How many people openly say, and acknowledge that they struggle throughout the day? Yes. What I've noticed though is, the ways that I don't struggle surpass any level of, like, my relationships right now, my ability to connect with people, my appreciation for life and other people and humanity and things like that was never at this level. You know what I mean? So on one level, can I get triggered? Can things happen? Absolutely. Do I get super freaked out about it anymore? Absolutely not, because I understand what it is, and why it's happening and how to take care of myself. And then I look at this other aspect of my life, the position that I'm in now, as far as what my career is. It's a pure example of post-traumatic growth. And so people, to think that you'll never be triggered again, and if that's the only way you're judging, are you better, are you are you healthy, you're going to miss the mark. If you look at the way that your life just expands after, tragedy through post-traumatic growth, that's where you go, damn, I'd do it all over again to be the person that I am today.